Hey, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I still want to talk a little bit about emotional regulation, which I'm going to do next week. But I honestly thought that maybe for Valentine's week we should talk a little bit about compassion and being compassionate with ourselves and compassionate with others, and whether you're living a compassionate life or not, because a lot of people do not actually have any compassion. They don't understand how to be compassionate. So I thought we would talk about that today. You know, there's a difference between compassion and empathy. But what is compassion? Compassion comes from the Latin word compati, which means literally to suffer with. Compassionate people have the ability to show concern for the misfortunes of others. It could be anyone, adult or child, who's in trouble, sick, hungry, unhoused, or some other unmet need. When confronted with struggles, sufferings, or failures of others, compassionate people feel strongly motivated, almost compelled to emotionally help out, or at least pray or give them something energetically. A prayer is a form of giving energy that will help. Now, empathy is a little bit different. Compassion is a personality trait that develops through nurture, but you can still learn it as an adult. But empathy is kind of feeling other people's feelings and not really making it easier for you to be compassionate because you're not distanced enough. You're taking on somebody's feelings, which is actually a boundary issue. In certain ways, I know that sometimes we can't help but being empathic, but we have to learn how to put boundaries around the nature of being empathic and turn it to compassion so that we're not busy getting in somebody else's energy field, kind of trying to take over what they're going through, but rather giving them the compassion and the positive energy that we can give in order to help someone out. You know, it's interesting because I had a situation that I was at a restaurant with a friend who has been ill and is on a walker, and the hostess, trying to give compassion, asked what had happened. Well, my friend has many things that are going on right now, and it's a long story, and it's not something you should tell a hostess. But this hostess continued to like, well, what happened? Oh, are you hurt? And it was kind of awkward, actually. As my friend just said, she was recovering from a hip surgery. And so sometimes you may be thinking you're giving compassion when you're actually getting into somebody's boundary space. So you have to really know the time and the place to give compassion. That hostess was just trying to be as nice as she could be, but she was being inappropriate without even realizing it. And so when we see someone out that we want to give compassion to, perhaps it's better to do that silently, okay? So why is it important to display compassion? Because, you know, giving that hug or word of encouragement in a moment of crisis can positively change the lives of those who feel vulnerable. And you know what? We've all felt vulnerable at times, right? And so maybe when we are being compassionate and giving that positive energy, not in a way that you're feeling sorry for someone, because when you feel sorry for someone, that is not compassion. That again is a boundary issue. When compassion is a different energy altogether. It means that, hey, I don't feel sorry for you, but I have compassion for what you're going through, and I'm here for you whenever you need me to be. I'll listen when you talk, and I'll make a dinner for you if you need. I'll drive you somewhere if you want me to. That's different, right? Okay? So you are really supposed to first show yourself compassion, and let's talk about that before we talk about other forms of compassion. You have to recognize that you too are human. Now, this goes back to last week when we're talking about anxiety and the toll that anxiety can take on you, where you feel like you have to always be perfect and do everything perfectly in order to be good, I guess is the right way to say it. But you got to recognize you're human too, that we all do things that are inappropriately recognized by others, I guess, or that we recognize as inappropriate. And we have to start remembering we're just human, that, you know, to err is human, right? and to make sure that you are okay if you mess up from time to time, because it's the only way that you learn. And some people get really pissed off at themselves when they mess up. They yell and they carry on. Oh, blah, 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 I'm just mad at myself, which is honestly really kind of pathetic. If people have compassion for themselves, they say, okay, I messed up. What do I need to do next time? How do I need to change this? Maybe I need to write about it. Maybe I need to meditate about it. I know I'm not perfect. And, take the high road with yourself. Don't take the low road where you're using that form of a lack of self-regulation to not be compassionate. So you quit beating yourself up. You're so quick often to comfort someone else. That's okay. We'll fix it this way or whatever. But you blame yourself, you judge yourself harshly, you carry it around with you for a while. If only I had said this, if only I had done that. You have to stop being so hard on yourself and have compassion for yourself. One place where I wish people had compassion for themselves is when they have a loved one that's dying. Sometimes dying is a private act or action, and I have all too many people that say, I visited my loved one the day before, but I wasn't there when they died the day after, or I just got up and went to the bathroom and he or she died when I was gone, or I wish I had told myself to go visit sooner, now I'll never have a chance. You have to be compassionate with yourself on that. Sometimes the spirit wants to leave on their own for whatever reason. You have to honor and respect that your loved one's spirit did what it wanted to do, whether you were on your way there or you just saw them yesterday or you ran to the bathroom or whatever. So have some compassion for yourself there, okay? Acknowledge your struggles. Sometimes you don't acknowledge your struggles in a way that is with a lack of compassion. Because again, going back to last week, you're freezing. You're not acknowledging your emotions. Unprocessed emotions will remain there until we deal with them. So you have to be able to honor a difficult moment, to talk to yourself with compassion, to be able to give yourself the same energy you would give someone else if they were going through a tough time. Have compassion in a relationship. Sometimes you have to repeat affirmations. I accept myself for who I am regardless of my shortcomings, or I accept my spouse for who they are even though they haven't processed their own stuff yet or whatever, because you love them. You just have to find that compassion to not sit visual on your mistakes and shortcomings. Forgive yourself. Number one person that we need to forgive is ourselves. It's a matter of life or death to your spirit, forgiving yourself. And what I mean by that is if you forgive yourself, your spirit finds life in the afterlife in a different way than if you haven't forgiven yourself. Then your spirit finds a different life in the afterlife, because then you have to learn how to forgive yourself from there and work that out. So you want to forgive yourself here before you get into the afterlife and make sure that you are giving yourself the compassion that you deserve. Accept that you're not perfect. Obviously, we just went over that. You have to learn to love yourself and all the imperfections of who you are. Practice mindfulness. Once again, the same theme, practicing mindfulness. Show kindness to yourself. Now, when you're practicing compassion for yourself and for other people, random acts of kindness are really awesome. You're actually seeing that now often on the planet, which makes me happy. People picking up a restaurant tab for someone else, or going through the line at Starbucks and picking up the person behind you, a stranger, their coffee for the day, just putting a smile on their face, stopping when somebody is stopped to help push the car out of the road, or doing something that is a random act of kindness and allowing that to be a compassionate act, not only for the person that you're giving the kindness to, but also for yourself. Now, when you are doing random acts of kindness, or when you are doing kindness things, sometimes you want to be anonymous about it. If we're going to pick up the tab for somebody at a restaurant, we usually tell the waitress, don't tell them that we've done that. We don't need to have those accolades or we don't need that person to come over to us and say, wow, thank you. Oftentimes we do it when we see someone that has a hat on that they're a Vietnam vet, just to thank them for their service, or a World War II vet, which we're seeing less of now. But you have to do kindness and acts of compassion with respect to boundaries too. You can't, not abide by someone's wishes because you're trying to be compassionate. I'll give you an example of that. Bill and I were supposed to go to Christmas down in Texas to see our grandchildren. I was really excited about it. Bill was driving. He was leaving Christmas Day and driving because he had to stay longer than I could stay. And that way we could send the presents in the car, and he would have his car there to work. And so I was flying down the next day, and I was going to stay for a few days and fly home. So I got caught up in that Southwest flight cancel situation and couldn't fly down. I was able to do FaceTime with them and see them open the presents and so on. But I took that as a way that I needed to show myself compassion and spend a few days just to myself, maybe giving myself some downtime that I have not given myself in a long time. And so I actually would get up in the morning, take a shower, and put a fresh pair of pajamas on, and I stayed in pajamas for about 4 days. But all my friends felt compassion. I was alone on Christmas Day, I was alone on New Year's Eve, I was alone on New Year's Day, and everybody wanted to have me come with them on Christmas Day, with them on New Year's Day. Can they bring something over? Can they do this? Can they do that? And I said no, because I wanted to have compassion for myself and not feel like I had to do something to please them because they were giving me compassion. And lucky for me, my friends are all super awesome, and all of them understood why I was saying no and spending that time to myself. But if somebody had pushed their way over, that would not have been an act of compassion. That would have actually been in my boundary space. So that's a good example of that, okay? Telling somebody things like it's going to get better and inspiring hope can be a double-edged sword, right? So if somebody has Lou Gehrig's disease, it's not going to get better, okay? And you can't assure them that things are going to get better, but you can assure them that you're going to be with them every step of the way, that you're going to do whatever it takes to help them, that you're going to reassure them that you will help them through the challenge, and you're going to reassure them that on the other side of the veil, you'll be looking for signs from them from heaven. And those are ways to offer hope. I hope that you tuned in on the podcast that I did with two lovely people, Bart Stevens and Judy Smith. If you didn't go back and look at that, they were both widowed young, and I loved how they talked about compassion for themselves during the course of what happened through the loss of their spouses, with both of their spouses being ill. So support people's dreams is a form of compassion, right? You don't want to say to somebody, well, you can't do that, or you're not going to get there, or, oh, really? That's your dream, or that's your hope, or, don't be mean-spirited with people. Just ask them, tell me more about it. Tell me how long you've had this dream. Is there something I can do to help you achieve that? Is that always been a life goal? Those kinds of things are compassionate. Validating someone's feelings creates a condition of compassion. Remember, compassion is an action, you guys. It's the action of compassion. I can understand why you feel that way. Now, you may not agree with them, but you don't have to say, oh, that's a stupid way to feel. You don't have to do that, okay? You don't even have to help them reframe. All you have to do is validate, I understand why you feel that way. And then there's forgiveness again, forgiving people around you. There's a saying that goes, revenge is a dish best served cold. I think that that's a terrible feeling, to feel vengeful or to feel like you have resentment or revenge against somebody. I think forgiveness is always the high road, and it always reduces the karmic connection because forgiveness isn't about the other person anyway. It's about letting yourself off the hook from the condition of the divisiveness between you and another person. So continue to be compassionate there. Now, what about compassion to strangers and the poor? Because we see a whole lot of people panhandling on the street. Well, I would say to you that you have to trust your gut on what you feel is someone in genuine need and someone that makes their living that way. Actually, statistically, panhandlers make about 25 bucks an hour. Did you know that? So you have to really kind of figure out what you feel about that. But there may be something through your church or your synagogue that supports a certain charity or something. We have Matthew's Crossing at our church where we help with food. We did a shoebox thing at Christmas time where everybody filled a shoebox with different toys to send to underprivileged children and kids in Africa. You can do something like St. Jude's. Vanna White was on my podcast a couple months ago and talked about donating part of her proceeds from her yarn business to St. Jude's, which is amazing and wonderful. So please make sure that if you have a lot, that you show compassion to strangers and the poor in your own way. Don't judge people, okay? People get into situations that's why I say trust your gut on panhandlers and stuff. There are people that choose to be homeless, and there are people who are homeless from circumstances, and there are people that you have to show compassion to, say at the workplace, like the nervous Nellie or the negative Ned in the workplace. Instead of constantly complaining about them and rolling your eyes about, Nellie, she's always afraid of everything, or Ned, he always has a negative comment for everything. Show them some compassion. After you looked at last week's anxiety class, you know that negative Ned and nervous Nellie come from a childhood that taught them that. So have some compassion for them and choose a healthy way to cope with that. Try to be kind. Don't criticize people. Harsh and critical judgments are because you're judging yourself harshly and you're criticizing yourself and you're projecting that out. Talk to people kindly. Maybe you need to be an advocate. Maybe you're one of these people that volunteer at Hospice of the Valley, or maybe you volunteer for child help, or you volunteer for the CASA. That's an advocation of compassion and compassion in action. Maybe you're just the type of person on Facebook. I've seen it time and time again, where you offer resources to someone who is finding themselves on Facebook talking about their anxiety or their depression or their loss or their fears or their issues. And you might be one of these people that say, hey, here's a resource for you. That's a way of actually being compassionate. So, make sure that you're offering whatever kindness and guidance and stuff that is appropriate, lending a hand when it's appropriate, when it's not in somebody's boundary system. Giving praise where it's due is an important part of compassion. You don't want to be constantly saying somebody, you're awesome, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're this, you're that, because pretty soon it's hollow. The person that hears that all the time just feels like, that's hollow. It doesn't really feel like anything if you're in a constant state of doing that. So give praise where it is due. Give recognitions to somebody's strengths and positive attributes, especially in the workplace, or, acknowledge somebody's contributions, but don't be a phony baloney with it and constantly we used to call it a brown noser when we were kids. Final thoughts on how to show compassion. Let's just say that you're a nurse. Okay, and you have grown kids, and somebody in your department just had a newborn baby, and they have a shift on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. If you took that shift for them, that's compassion in action. That's on showing compassion, okay? So, in a nutshell, let's see, how do we practice compassion? Speak with kindness. Apologize when you've made a mistake. Listen carefully and without judgment. Encourage other people. offer to help someone with a task or situation, be happy for someone else's success, accept people for who they are, and forgive people for making mistakes. Have a great week.